Okay, so this lecture is going to be called basically everything you wanted to know about walls, but we're afraid to ask. So, so walls, basically we're going to use this walls command, so it's under the architecture tab, and it's over here to the left. Yep. Yeah, let me grab your screen real quick. Sorry. Okay, so the walls command is on the architecture tab, and if you hit the little drop down menu here, you've got a couple different options. You've got walls architectural, walls structural, wall by face, and then you've got these two that are grayed out here, wall sweep and wall reveal, and those two will only work once you have a wall actually drawn. So this is actually something that you do to an existing wall. Now the one we're going to talk about today is primarily, and the one we're going to use mostly for this class is going to be this walls architectural. So let me click on that. Alright, so walls architectural, and over here this is our type selector. So this tells me basically which wall I'm using. Alright, so right now I'm using the walls, the basic wall, generic 8-inch. Alright, and then to draw a wall, basically all you're going to do is it's a couple different options you have. You can click 2 points, so I click the first point on the screen, and you'll automatically get these temporary dimensions, these blue dimensions here. Alright, so I can kind of scroll across here, kind of slide it across, and get whatever length I want. So if I want 27 feet, I click again. If I want 15 feet, click again. Alright, the other option, and probably the more useful option, is just to type in the length that you want. So for example, if I want a 50-foot wall, I just what I do is I rotate the cursor until it's flat, until you get like a horizontal. You basically rotate the cursor in any direction that you want. Alright, so I'm going to go with a horizontal wall here, and I'm going to go 50 feet. So all I do is just type in 50 feet and hit enter, and it'll draw a 50-foot wall. Alright, now default for Revit, the default dimensions are feet. So if I wanted to just type in feet, I can just go 20, enter, and I don't even have to hit the foot button. If I want say I want 30 foot 5 inches, I can type 30 space 5 without putting any feet or inches in there, and what it'll do is it'll give me 30 foot 5 inches. So it's like a shortcut basically. So if you just put a space between them, it understands that the first number is feet and the second number is inches. So alright, so those are kind of the basics on actually drawing the walls. Now another thing you'll notice too is after you draw a series of walls, so I've got a series of walls here, and I'm going to select one of those walls that I've already drawn. And once I select it, you'll notice I get these temporary dimensions. So I've got 30 foot 5 and I got 44 foot 7 over here. So it automatically pulls up those temporary dimensions, and I can edit the position of this wall using those temporary dimensions. So if I want this instead of 30 feet 5 inches, let's say I want it maybe 20 feet. So I can just type in 20, enter, and it automatically adjusts it. So pick the temporary dimension of, pick the wall that you want to move, and you can edit the temporary dimensions by just clicking on them and then typing in 25, and it'll automatically change your wall. Now what we're going to do later on in the class, once I get through the kind of lecture portion and kind of going over the overview of walls, then what we're going to do is everybody opens up Revit, and we're all going to try a couple of these so you can get some practice. But for right now, I'm just kind of talking about it. Okay, so let me go to my 3D view, and you can see here, this is basically what the walls look like once they've been drawn. Alright, so let's go with a little bit more information here. Let me go to level 1 again. So I'm going back to my level 1 floor plan. Alright, go back to the walls command. Alright, so obviously one of the first things you're going to want to know is like how tall do I, how do I control the height of that wall? So once you select the walls command, oops, hang on a second, let me go back to there. Alright, you'll notice then the options bar shows up. Alright, so here's our options bar, and the first thing you've got here on the options bar is height. And it's a little drop down menu. You can either set the height or the depth. So obviously if you pick the height, then the wall's going to project up. If you pick the depth, then the wall's going to project down. So 99.9% of the time, we're just going to pick the height. Alright, so I'm going to pick the height of the wall. And then where do you want to set that height? Well, that's what this next one here is. It says you've got a choice of unconnected, level 2, and level 1. Alright, so let me just go, so as a kind of a going back to my elevation here. So here's my elevation, and notice by default with Revit it puts in 2 levels, level 1 and level 2. Alright, and I'm going to put in a third level. Alright, so let me go to levels, and let me just put in another level. Alright, so there's level 3. Alright, so I've got level 3 here at 20 feet. Let me go back to my floor plan view. And walls. Okay, so I've got, now I've got a third one. So I created that third level, so now I have a third choice. So I can either set it to level 1, level 2, or level 3. Actually, I can't really set it to level 1 because right now I'm drawing on level 1, so you can't really set a height of 0 for a wall. So I can pick either level 2 or 3, because notice when I pick level 1, it gives me this little warning here that says, nope, you can't do that. Alright, so that's one thing to know too, is that when I'm drawing a wall, by default, the base level, or basically the bottom of that wall, is going to be wherever that, whatever level I'm on. So if I'm on level 2, the bottom of my wall is going to be on level 2. Once I'm on level 3, bottom of my wall is level 3. Until I tell it otherwise. So, alright, then the third option is unconnected. So unconnected is basically if you don't want it connected to a level, and you want to set a wall height to any odd number. So if I wanted 15 foot 6.5 inches, I would set it to unconnected, and then I would set my height here. So now I can draw a couple walls here. All right, 15 foot 6.5 inches, and then when I go to my 3D view, you can see here. These are the walls that were set by default to 20 feet. These are 15 foot 6.5 inches. Alright, so I can set my height that way. Let's go back to the options bar. Alright, so then location line. So basically what the location line is, let me just go to here. You have a couple different choices. So I've got wall center line, core center line, finish face exterior, finish face interior, and core face exterior and core face interior. Alright, so with a location line is basically a reference point in that wall, because I'm drawing a 2D wall, and I'm drawing basically a single line to represent that 2D wall. I need to know whether I'm drawing to the inside face of that wall, the middle of that wall, or to the exterior of that wall. So let me zoom in here. Let's go to wall center line. Alright, so I have it set to wall center line. I'm going to draw my wall, and notice, see that blue dash line there? That's my location line. I'm basically drawing it relative to the center of that wall. Alright, let's go back to finish face exterior. Alright, finish face exterior. My reference point changes. My location line has changed. Finish face interior. Alright, so now the other option is core. It had core face interior, core face exterior. And we'll talk about core here in a little bit, but just know that that's an option there. Alright, so then the next one is chain. Alright, so that when the chain box is selected, basically what it means is I'm drawing a wall, and once I finish this wall, the next wall is ready to begin. I don't have to go back up and get to the same command. So if I'm drawing a wall in series, like that, then when the chain command is selected, then I'm just going from one wall to the next. As opposed to when it's unchecked, and I click a wall, and that wall now, that command is ended. So that command is finished. So that's the chain command. Offset is basically you're going to set an offset, so now when I draw the wall, there's a 10-foot offset. Alright, and then radius, if you want to draw a curved wall, I can change the radius to 10 feet. And now when I draw a wall here, oops, I got to draw a longer wall. Oops. Alright. Sorry, I got to draw a corner. I have to have chain set. As you can see, I don't usually use the radius command, so I don't know it very well. So there. So when you draw an intersection, it automatically puts a radius on it. Alright, so let me delete some of these guys here and get them out of the way. Another thing I wanted to talk about, okay, so let me go and draw a wall. I'm going to set this wall to level 3. Alright, so the top of the wall now is going to be locked to level 3. So I'm going to draw this wall here. Alright. And I'm going to go to my elevation view. Alright, so that wall, I set the top of that wall to level 3. And if I change level 3, since that wall's locked to it, wherever I change level 3, that top of that wall is going to follow it. Alright, so now that those two are locked, basically, together. Alright, so back to the floor plan and the wall command. Alright, so we talked about location line. Let's talk about the properties dialog box here. Alright, so like I said, this is my selection of the wall here under the properties. This is the type selector, and if I click on there, we get the drop down menu. So this is what I'm using is the architectural template for Revit, and by default it comes with these walls. There's about, I don't know, probably about 20 walls in here that Revit comes in with defaults, and so you can use that type selector to select any one of those walls. So if I wanted to draw a brick on metal stud, then I can switch walls and draw a brick on metal stud. Now if I have, I'm going to set my detail level here to fine, and I'm going to add a little color here to the drawing, so go to shaded. Okay, so here's that brick on metal stud wall that I had. Now the other thing I can do with that type selector is I can select that existing wall, that generic 8-inch, and I can change that to exterior ephes on metal stud. And I can switch it to that. So with the type selector I can also switch different types of walls. Alright, and then also, let me pick this wall again. So back to the properties dialog box here. So here's my base constraint, level 1. Just like we were saying, if you're on level 1 and you're drawing on level 1, then the bottom of that wall. Now if I want to set an offset to that, so let's say I want it 10 feet lower than level 1, I could set an offset to -10. Oops, -100. Alright, -10, hit apply, and now when I look at it in elevation, now that wall has a 10-foot offset, offset on the base. And the same thing works too. Now then I've got, let me select that wall again. Alright, so here's my base offset. You also have a top constraint, which we had set to level 3, and you could also do an offset there as well. Alright, so let me switch this back to 0 though. Alright, so we got our top offset. Alright, and then the rest of this, basically the phases down here are new construction. So you have different phases that you can set that to. So you could say that's a new wall or it's an existing wall, and then you can either say that in the new construction it's either demoed or it's existing, it's going to remain. So you can, those are phase settings. That's if you're doing a remodel project and you want to either demolish something or keep it. Alright, so that's basically the properties dialog box. Now, the other thing too about these walls here, let's go there. Hang on, I said something here. Oh, because it's existing. Let me set that back to new construction. Alright, so here's our here's that wall. Okay, so like I was saying though, by default Revit comes with a series of about 20 walls, but that's pretty limiting. You're obviously going to need more walls than that. So you need the ability to then edit those walls. So that's where the edit type comes in. Alright, so I've got a series of existing walls, but I want to create a new wall. I want to edit an existing wall. So I select that wall there, and I'm going to edit type. Alright, so now that I've selected that wall and I hit edit type, now I can edit that wall. So now we're kind of in the properties of the type properties of that wall. So once you get to the type properties, then you look under here and you see structure, and it'll say edit, and I can edit the structure of that wall. Now this is where I can edit the finished materials, the sizes of those materials, and all that other stuff. Alright, so this is basically the wall edit assembly dialog box. I'm going to add one more part here to it. In the lower left hand corner there's the preview button. Alright, so I hit preview. Alright, so this gives me a preview of what that wall looks like in plan. And I can also down here set it to section, so I want to see what it looks like in section. Alright, so that's basically what this wall looks like. So we can change things like the size of materials. So right here we're using a metal stud for the structural part, which is here. Alright, so I've got a metal stud layer, and I can change that instead of a 6-inch, maybe I want a 3 5/8 metal stud. Alright, so then I can switch that, so I can change the size of it, and notice it does that in the preview. If I don't want let's see, if I don't want a particular material, let's say I don't want this vapor retarder here on the level 8, I can delete it. Now it has a thickness of 0, so it's not really going to show you much in the preview. But I can delete that material right out of there, so delete. Alright, instead of the gypsum board 5/8 1/2 inch, I want to change it to 5/8, so I change it to 5/8. Okay, and then the other thing too is that I can change materials. So instead of this ephes exterior material, and if I select that little box here, see this little box here with the little 3 dots in it? That'll take me to another menu. That's going to take me to my materials menu. So I'm going to switch out this material, and I'm going to maybe put in brick. So I go to the 3 little dots, and I select that, and it opens up another dialog box, and these are all the materials. So these are all the materials that I have as a default in Revit. So I want to put in brick, and rather than kind of looking around using the little toggle here, I'm just going to type in, I'm going to search for a material. So I'm going to go brick, enter, and it basically narrows it down to just the brick. So I'm going to do brick common. Alright, so here, and so what you have over here, these are your graphics. You can also edit that, go a little bit further and edit the appearance of it. So this is what it would look like when we're rendering it. You also have more information that you can put on that material, like physical properties of that and thermal properties of it. Alright, so we're going back to graphics here, though. So this is going to be our exterior hatch, basically, on the wall. And this is going to be the cut pattern. So basically when we do a section through that wall, that's what the brick is going to look like in section. Alright, so let's just go to that. I'm going to pick brick common. Okay, and that, since it's brick, I'm going to change it to 3 5/8. Okay. Alright, so then I've changed the exterior material, changed the thickness of it. Then over here it's function. You have to kind of type in give each material a different function. And so right here I've got finish. So you've got a couple different selections here for the function of that wall. You've got structure, substrate, thermal air layer, membrane layer, finish layer. So you've got 2 finish layers, a finish 1 and a finish 2. Now that basically means the inside of the wall and the outside of the wall. Finish 1 would be the outside of the wall, and finish 2 would be the inside of the wall, the gypboard. Structure is obviously the structural portion of the wall. So this is a metal stud wall. So what that means is basically the metal stud is the structural portion of the wall. So that's why we give. Oops, sorry. Let me switch that back. Let me change that back to function 1. So that's why basically the metal stud layer is set to structure, and then substrate, which would be sheathing, some sort of plywood. A membrane layer would be kind of like a thin sheet. Usually membrane layers always have a thickness of 0 because they're usually a sheet of something, some sort of polyethylene sheet or something like that, or could be a spray-on material. Sometimes you have an air barrier, which is a spray-on air barrier. All right, and then thermal air layer is going to be either insulation mostly. Like sometimes you'll put rigid insulation on the outside of a wall or something like that, or air. Which in the case where you're using masonry, you always have an air layer behind the masonry. So that's basically what that is. So it's either going to be thermal or air. All right. So, and then these little numbers here that are in parentheses, let me go into that a little bit. So that handout that I gave you a little bit ago, let's see, where is that? Here it is. All right, so this is this basically talks about what those little numbers in parentheses mean. So this is the layer function, basically a little diagram of what that means. All right. Yep. Question.
What if you're using non-standard materials?
Like well, then with Revit you have the option too. For example, you can create your new materials. So if I go to this materials browser, what I can do is I can create a new material. So what I can do is maybe copy this material. I can duplicate that material. All right, so I got cherry 2, and I can say, all right, this is going to be straw, or straw bale or something like that. All right, so now and then I can go into here, and now that I've got that new material made, then I can give it a hatch pattern if I wanted. Like that could be its exterior hatch pattern, and I can change its color if I wanted it to be gray. And then I can change its cut pattern if this is what I wanted to use to represent that. So you can create a new material, and then and then here you can create, if you can get a photograph or something like that of straw of that material, you can plug that in here, and that'll be your rendered material. So you can create a new material, and you can edit all these properties to create all the properties for that material.
How did you do that again?
Okay, so what I did was, I'm going to cancel here. So what I do is I go into here, and I've got my materials. And then what I do is I pick the little box here with 3 little dots. Alright, that takes me to my materials dialog box here. Alright, so I can either take an existing material and then right click and duplicate it to create a new one, or I can just go to the little button down, I think there's one of these down here. Yeah, create new material. The little globe with the little plus sign on it, so I can create a new material that way. sometimes I like to use, a lot of times I like to use existing materials that are close so that I don't have to, create one from scratch. So yeah, so you can create new materials as well, just like you can create new walls, and things like that. So all right, so let me go to that layer functions thing again. Okay, so what we've got here. All right, does everybody see on this diagram here the two green lines? All right, so we've got green lines there and green line there. That basically is layers 5 and 7. Oops, sorry, the core boundaries. All right, so we talked about core before when we were talking about location line. All right, so I've got a core boundary on the top and a core boundary on the bottom. All right, usually the core boundaries are usually around the structural material. And what the core boundaries do is basically they define what the core of that wall is. 99.9% of the time, or 100% of the time, it's just going to be the structural material. The reason why you want to do that is for dimensioning. So what you want to do is be able to, when you're dimensioning, typically when you dimension a wall, you always dimension to the first material that's put in for that wall. So for example, if you have a metal stud construction in your building, the first thing that they're going to put in as a part of that wall is the metal stud. Right, they're not going to put the chipboard in first. They're not going to put in the brick on the outside first. They're putting in the metal stud, and it's usually the structural portion of that wall. So what the core boundary does, and so when you're dimensioning those walls, you want to dimension to that first material that they have. It doesn't make any sense when you're dimensioning a series of walls to dimension to the chipboard, because then when the guy's actually putting in the wall, he has to subtract 5/8 of an inch or a half an inch from that dimension. To find out where that stud is. So what we do with the core is we define what the core is, and essentially the core allows us, when we're dimensioning, allows me to dimension to the core, which is basically going to be the metal stud. So 99.9% of the time, the core is going to surround that first material that's put in when they're constructing that wall. All right, so that's my core boundary. All right, the other thing I wanted to talk about too is these numbers here in the parentheses. So these are layer priorities. So each of these layers, so the numbers, the lower the number, the higher the priority of that material, or of that function. All right, so let me just go, okay. All right, so here's my new wall. Now notice when these two walls intersect here, notice how the brick on that wall stops and then starts back up again on the other side of that wall. And the same thing going this way. So let me switch them out to two different walls. There we go. We'll do a CMU insulated. So same thing here. So when I switch it out here, this is a CMU on the outside of the wall, and it cuts clean through that wall. I got the brick on the outside here, and it stops, and it starts back up again on the other side of that wall. Actually, I kind of like. Let me pick another one. That's not really showing. There we go. This is a good one. All right. So basically, what is how that when the brick stops at a certain wall, basically that has to do with those priorities, those functional priorities here. Okay, so like I said, the lower the number here, the higher the priority. So the metal stud layer is the highest priority. So that means basically it'll cut through any material that has a lower priority. So on that opposite wall that it's cutting through, it'll cut through the layer, priority 5 wall material, and the priority 2 material, and the priority 3 material. All right, so notice on that wall then the layer, the metal stud, which has a priority of 1, is cutting all the way through that second wall. And then same thing on this CMU wall. If I go to its materials here, it has a metal stud layer and it has a priority of 1. So those two kind of join up. Then it's got substrate on the outside here, which is a level 2, and then it's got the air barrier, which is a level 3, and the finish, which is a level 4. So you'll notice when it's coming across here, all of those materials, the sheathing, the air, and the CMU on the outside, all stop at that metal stud. Alright, so what Revit wants to do with this is it wants to create as close to real-life conditions when you have an intersection of a wall. It wants to actually show that intersection exactly how it would be built. That when you're actually building this, the metal studs here go in first, and then they're going to put the sheathing on. So obviously the sheathing from this wall can't intersect through, or can't cut through that sheathing. And then the sheathing from this wall is actually going to connect to the sheathing on that wall and turn the corner, and then the air barrier here, this airlator here, is going to be continuous throughout the wall when you turn that corner, and then you're going to have a termination where the brick stops and the CMU starts. So that's what those layer functions are actually trying to do, is actually create a real life condition for that for the intersection of that wall. Yep, question.
Can you reverse part of the wall, or even like the way it comes in? Can you reverse the exterior? Or
Do you mean like if I so if I select this? Yeah. So so if I select this wall here, and see this little up down arrow,
yes,
you can click on that, and that'll flip the wall.
but it does the whole thing.
But it does the whole thing, yeah. No, you were thinking of flipping a material?
Well, for instance, where it intersected, you could have it so that the outside of the building, if you're standing on this side, is there, or standing on the other side, you're also seeing the outside.
Oh, when you're saying, well, say that again. Say that again.
Depending on if you were in quadrant 2 or 4, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So in other words, if you wanted the brick part like down on one side and up on the other.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Walls, is that what you were saying?
Yeah. So what you'd have to, for that one, what you'd have to do is just go. You'd have to split that wall, and then flip it, and then actually, yeah. Let me do that, and then it's probably easier just to draw a whole separate wall.
Make a new wall.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably easier than it's probably easier to make a whole new wall than to yeah. But yeah, you could do something like that. But yeah, to flip a wall, if you've got a wall there, if you want to flip it, you can either hit the space bar or hit that little toggle. Alright, so let's see. So that is so that basically covers kind of the interior guts of the wall. And let me check my notes to see if I've got. Oh yeah, there's one other thing. So let's go back to the architecture tab and then the wall command. I forgot to go over the draw commands here. All right, so when you're drawing a wall, so I go to architecture and I go to wall. Oops. All right, these are my draw commands. So when I'm drawing it, I'm usually using a single line to draw a 3D wall. But you have several different options. Now the first option that I went through is just the plain old line command. That's basically draw one point, draw another point, and there's your wall. Alright, you also have a couple different choices here too. You can do a rectangle. So if you want to do 4 walls at once, pick the rectangle command. Alright. If I want to do an odd shape like a polygon or some sort of thing like that, basically you'll select one of these, tell it how many sides you want. So I want an octagon. And it'll create a shape like that. And then circles, of course, on the options bar. Then you have, when you draw a circle, you get a radius here. You got your dimension here for a radius. And then you can go in and edit that radius. So I want a 10-foot radius instead. And you can draw it back there. I want the brick on the outside. I can flip it. And it does weird things like that. Yeah, we'd have to fix that. Okay, then we have arcs that we can draw. I've got a 3-point arc. So 1, 2, and then draw the kind of the radius of it. Alright, and then another one where I can draw radius like that. Alright, then the rest of these are kind of editing walls. So this one, if I want to fillet an arc, I can put that on there, and I can click basically 2 walls on that corner and get a radius that way. So this basically adds a radius to a 90 degree, or well, any kind of a corner. Alright, so I click on the 2 sides that I want to create that radius, and then I just kind of give it a radius there. Alright, then the Pic Lines command, that's another really good one. This is probably one of my favorite ones. This doesn't exist in AutoCAD, and I wish it did had existed in AutoCAD. Let me do something real quick. I'm going to draw a floor. Okay, just kind of a generic floor here. Okay, finish. Okay, let me delete all these other walls here, kind of clean this up. Okay, so here's my floor. That's just what I draw there. That's basically a slab. Let's just pretend that's a slab there. Alright, and then I can use my Pic Lines. So I go to Wall, Pic Lines, select the wall that I want to create, set my height to level 3. That's good. Finish face. Let's go finish face exterior. Alright, then I can use the Pic Lines, and then I can just pick that line there, and it adds a wall automatically. Alright, the Pic Lines there, so I've got 4 walls basically, and you just click on that edge, and it'll drop a wall onto there. Now you get this little preview here. Let me zoom in a little bit, delete that, go back to Pic Lines. I hover my cursor over that edge there, and I don't know if you can see the blue dash line, and it tells you which side it's going to create that wall on. Oops. So I can create it on the inside. You can barely see it there because it's on gray, or you can create it on the outside. But you just gotta have to move your cursor back and forth, and it'll put a wall on that for you. All right. So that is so that's kind of the basics of walls, and so we're gonna probably let me just stop this, and then we'll do a kind of a demonstration where we're all kind of working on it. So let me stop this real quick.